pretend they're not here. It's a bit unfortunate, but not much I can do. So yeah, okay. Okay, ready. Okay, yeah, I think quad is good, so I'm gonna start. So yeah, everyone, if you're here, do /warp Knuckles class. This is the main theater, and so as for me, I am Knuckles527, or Chase. Some of you guys might know me as Chase. I'm a member of Blockworks, and I'm an ex-member of Go Creative. And so for my interior masterclass today, I'm going to be discussing the main elements of interior and what kind of distinguishes a good interior from a bad interior. I'm going to try and do a live sample of interior if I can, and then I'm going to be offering a brief question and answer session afterwards. So yeah, currently we're in the main theater hall area that I designed. Unfortunately, it has been sort of griefed by chunk errors. But yeah, we're just going to pretend they're not here and roll with it. And so even though it's kind of hard to see, this main theater encompasses some of the important elements of interior design, those being, atmosphere and lighting, coloration and palette, texture, and form. And so some of these examples aren't really illustrated in my other examples in the panel, but if you notice, the seats are kind of rounded, which helps to wrap all the viewers onto the central main focus area, which would be the stage. And the background of the stage has a very chaotic sort of texture, which basically emphasizes it in contrast to the rest of the actual auditorium. So this is one element that I would suggest utilizing. It's like a focus point or an emphasis point that sort of contrasts the rest of your interior, and it works well in large auditoriums or like large rooms that need a sort of direction. If we go outside here, I'm not sure how many of you guys are following me, but I suggest everyone go outside, either through the chunk errors or through the proper entrance. And so if we come out here, you realize that although the theater was quite expansive underground, the actual building itself is rather minimalist. And I kind of wanted to use this to showcase that exterior is not always important to a build. It's not always vital. You can still have a really sort of like entertaining and exciting or interesting build using purely interior that can engage your viewer, even if you don't have an extremely elaborate or detailed or interesting exterior to go along with it. So around this main square area, I have a bunch of different examples of different styles and different themes for interior that I'm going to go through pretty quick. And let's see if that works. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you guys are following me or not, but if you are, go to the staircase area that says entrance, and then there are 3 buildings along that side. If you go to the far right, you'll see a sort of sandstone and brick type building. This is a Roman villa that I made as part of a survival games map about a year ago now, I think. And so these 3 main buildings that I'm going to be taking you guys through just for this part sort of emphasize rhythm and unity in interior spaces. And in saying that, I'm referring to that all the main rooms follow the same theme, and they all have like a similar layout and a similar lighting and similar furniture. They all are sort of in harmony with each other. They all share, the same sort of qualities. I'd invite you guys to, go in and explore and just, check everything out for your own enjoyment. As for space, this main villa has a sort of pool area that all the main rooms are sort of centered around. And this was a main element in Roman villas of the time. They had this, large atrium that sort of greeted the residents and helped to orient the house and sort of harmonize it with nature, because it's very open to the sky and can let light in and rainfall in and that sort of thing. Yeah, so if we continue down, there's also another sort of open sky courtyard, and you guys can feel free to explore through all of this. All the rooms, if you notice, they have the same sort of wall design, ceiling design, that whole sort of deal. So all the rooms here sort of emphasize unity and harmony. Someone in the chat just asked how I made the water flowers. I used World Edit for that, and I turned off block updates so they wouldn't sort of like disintegrate. Anyway, if we move on to the main building here, this gray one right next to the Italian villa, this is a Brutalist residential apartment building that I made for the Blockworks Brutalist contest about 2 summers ago now. And as you can tell, this is very starkly contrasts with the Roman villa, but it still has unity and harmony and utilizes space quite well, in my opinion, even though it's a completely different style. If you guys go inside and check it out, all the rooms have, a similar sort of palette, and they all have a similar sort of layout and furniture design. This was inspired by some of the earlier builds of World of Corrales, where I used to build, and that's where I mostly learned how to do interior. That's where I got inspired to do interior, building, one-to-one modern sort of interior rooms like this. And so if you look at the building itself, it has 2 main towers, essentially, that are connected by the canals and an actual bridge. And that sort of separates the office part from the residential part. And so I'm going to go into one of the apartment areas that's on the larger tower. I'm not sure how many of you are actually with me, but I'd encourage you just to try and merge through the walls if you can, and just take a look at some of the actual rooms of the interior. In particular, this room that I'm at has all white furniture and all gray and black sort of walls, and then I have these elements of blue that are sort of hinted throughout, which kind of draws the eyes away from all the actual white and the gray, and adds a bit of emphasis as well to the room. Because if your interior is purely all gray and all black and all white, it's going to be boring. You need some color in there somewhere. And I used so much gray in this particular interior because it's sort of evident of the Brutalist style. The Brutalist style being, very sort of simple and lacking color, just more form over function. Let's see, if we move on to the next example in this row, it is a townhouse that I built as part of an architectural project. It's based off of the Carlos Slim townhouse in the Upper East Side, New York City. And so this one also follows the principles of unity and form and rhythm, unity and rhythm in the interior design, meaning that all the rooms have a sort of like cohesive appearance. And so the exterior is a more traditional sort of ornate Gilded Age type of townhouse, but the interior is modernized. So if you go onto the first floor, we have a sort of brown and white wood and snow sort of coffee shop inspired by Starbucks to a degree. It has, bathrooms and a coffee bar and that whole sort of deal. And I utilized, brown sort of hues and wood tones to give a sense of warmth. And as you notice, even though this is modern and the Brutalist building was still modern, this one feels a lot more warm and a lot more realistic because I used sort of like wood tones and different brown tones to invoke feelings of warmth and of, like coffee beans and that sort of whole deal. Let's see, if we go up to the second floor, I have a similar style, but a bit altered. Again, it's a, sort of modern take on a residential townhouse. And this one has a balcony in the same way that some of the rooms in the Brutalist sort of building had, and in the villa, these all have balconies because I enjoy balconies. They help to utilize space and sort of emphasize space quite well. In this particular interior, I again used, white and black elements contrasted with wood and then, sort of green foliage elements to add some color and add warmth to the actual interior itself. I'd encourage you guys to, go in for yourselves and explore. But all the rooms have the same materials together, and they all have similar furniture and layouts. And this is a bit different than some of the other examples that I'll be taking you guys through. yeah, so rhythm and emphasis and harmony or just unity in your rooms is a big part and an important part depending on the type of interior you use. It's mostly the most important in like a modern sort of interior. If we continue down to the left of that townhouse, there's this sort of snowy castle, gray sort of snowy castle here. This was built as part of a PvP map back when I was on Go Creative, and this one particularly was used as the spawn, and it's kind of inspired by one of the Disney castles. But if you go inside, this particular example showcases one of my favorite uses of atmospheric lighting. I'm quite proud of it. As you come inside, you can tell that it's clearly a different style than the other examples. But unlike the other examples, this one utilizes lighting to highlight and sort of hide areas that aren't as detailed or emphasize areas that are more detailed, as opposed to the sort of clean, open lighting that the other modern buildings had. Guys, if you're messaging me or teleporting to me, I'm not going to be able to read or accept them right now. But yeah, so this main castle spawn area, I use a lot of arches to sort of invoke the feeling of a very grand sense, because this is, of course, a castle, and I used, a domed ceiling to give the kind of appearance that, you're sort of like an ant in this massive room. And of course, I built this on I believe it's a 2-to-1, maybe it's like 1.5-to-1 scale to sort of like make you seem as if you're a lot smaller than you are, and to give again a sort of grand feeling for the entire place. Yeah, I'd encourage you guys to just go in and explore on your own. This dining hall back here, right off the main spawn room, is differently colored, but it uses red tones to sort of evoke the feelings of like a dining room basically, or like a royal dining room. Again, using arches and then a very detailed ceiling and a detailed chandelier that kind of drips down. And I use lights basically under every single arch to highlight what was underneath the arch. As you can tell, some arches have thrones and others have these statues. Some of them kind of have bushes off to the sides. And then, of course, on the ceiling, I just added some lights to kind of draw your attention there. But as you notice, I didn't light up every single part of the interior. I kind of left some hidden in the shadows to emphasize certain parts of it. Okay, so that's that part of the interior. Now, if you guys follow me, go all the way across the big square design on the ground and go to this mansion, this brick mansion. If you guys are here, it is it's based off of the McAllister household from the movie Home Alone. So yeah, it's Kevin McAllister's house. Yes, Home Alone. And so this particular example of interior, I think, utilizes detail and color in a good way, meaning that as compared to some of the other examples, these particular rooms aren't all the same. They don't have harmony in the same way that the other examples did, because every room has different sort of wallpaper and different coloring and different layouts and different, furniture, that sort of stuff. So if you look through, all the different rooms have different qualities that make them unique, and this is sort of a popular element of houses of this sort of style, this more traditional style. Each room was supposed to, be grand in its own, and it's supposed to have its own meaning. If you guys noticed, for the dining room, I used a nice red color, which kind of like evokes the feelings of like being warm and getting food and eating, and amongst many other different feelings you could get from that. Some of the other rooms are like orange or green, which all have different meanings in their own right. If we come into the kitchen, it's like a yellowish sort of red, which is like a nice calm neutral color for like the serenity of the kitchen. But yeah, all these rooms are accurate to the actual house. I watched the movie multiple times to try and get them all correct. And a big thing in the actual movie was that the director made all the rooms have a lot of red and green colors, because the movie is set at sort of Christmas time. And so that was a large part of my direction for this sort of creation, really. Yeah, you guys can feel free to go through and explore and yeah, check it out. I'm going to move on to my next example, which is this big, massive castle that's directly opposite, the main sort of theater area. It's the big, giant gray castle. This was built as part of my Ravenswick project. That's about over a year and a half old now, but it's a massive Gothic castle. Yeah, so if you guys come inside, this is probably one of my better interiors. I think it's probably my favorite one, just out of personal opinion. This particular example, I think, is a good example of proportionality and scale in interior, because as opposed to most interiors where they're just sort of one-to-one medieval village houses, this one is built at like a 3-to-1 scale, and it's a full 3 floors of interior. I'd expect you guys to of course explore it on your own. And so this one also utilizes like the color in every single room, where every single room has a different color basically to evoke the ideas and emotions present within each room. So like the dining room has like a nice red color, and the kitchen has like a more blue, sort of calm, serene color, while the main foyer room has a sort of like brown wood element to it, and the library all the way at the back has like a deep purple and a deep black to sort of symbolize wisdom and learning, that whole sort of thing. Let's see. Yeah. If you continue up to the other floors, all the other rooms have different elements of them too. And so personally, I decided to build this on a 3-to-1, or maybe it was 2-to-1, just a larger than normal scale, because I built the castle so big. I decided to experiment and try it on a larger scale. And the benefit of building this on such a large scale is that I can get a much larger. I'm able to get more detail in a relatively similar amount of space, because the scale isn't so massive that you feel like you're an ant, but you can also sort of relate and like go through and sit on the couches and feel like you're sitting on a couch, even though it gives you so much more detail, which is why I do a lot of my interiors on 2-to-1 scale or 3-to-1 scale, as opposed to just 1-to-1 scale. Yeah. Alrighty. So I think that's that. Yeah, I'd encourage you guys to go through and explore, check out all the different examples. I think now I'm going to start my live demonstration of interior. I'm going to try and see how that's going to work. If you guys come to the center of the panel, the center of the orange floor design, it's right on top of the theater, you'll notice a stone brick, quartz, and jungle wood house. I did not build this, unfortunately. My friend Hydraxis allowed me, or gave me permission to use this house. This is from the Zephyra, I apologize, deep sea contest entry from Pandora's Blocks. I believe Tagano made it, but I was just kind of scrambling for time, and I needed something to do interior on. So if you guys have any ideas of what I should do in here, post them in the chat and I'll decide what I should make. I don't have any particular style or any room in mind. If you guys want anything in particular, just post them in the chat. I'll see what we can take from there. So like, pick a style, so like modern or traditional, classical, etc. And then tell me what type of room. So like maybe a bank, maybe a bedroom, maybe a bathroom, or whatever, that sort of thing. Try and pair them together. Let's see. Seeing a lot of classical. Let's see, courtroom, town hall, that would be cool. Yeah, chandeliers. Not doing that one. Bank, yep. Colonial, Victorian. Ooh, Greek romantic style. Let me see. Medieval bedroom. Let's see. Magical. I think I saw Victorian bank, Victorian town hall. Okay, so it seems like the consensus is more of like a Victorian sort of interior, so I'll go with that. so that will match the actual exterior of the house, which doesn't always have to be the case. Let's see, how are you placing trees? Okay, I think I'm gonna go Victorian, and I know someone earlier on posted bank, so I think a bank would be kind of cool if that's all right with you guys. I'm gonna try a Victorian or a classical sort of bank. Let's see how it works out. So yeah, we have this building already prepped, and so one of the main things I would want to emphasize when doing interior is to make sure that when you're first like prepping and getting all the walls down and hiding all the nasty bits of your exterior detailing, is to treat the interior at first like you're doing an exterior. And by that I mean, so if you notice, this main door archway has a lot of nice detailing on it, and what I would usually do is just like literally copy and paste what the actual sort of door has onto the inside, and then use that to sort of fill up your walls. Let's see. I hope Wall Edit is working. If it's not, that would be quite annoying. But yeah, it looks like it's working. Okay. So yeah, as I'm doing here, I'm just copying and pasting. Yes, I can do chandeliers. I might just copy some from my other examples, but yeah, sure. Yeah, anyway, first thing, I just copy and pasted this design from the front of the building. It's not going to be perfect because I'm doing this live, but that's sort of the first step. I always make sure to clean up the interior and treat it as if I'm doing an exterior when I'm doing interior, just so you can get all the walls and the ceiling down, and then you can go in and add divisionary walls and furniture and that whole sort of thing. You can add lighting and whatever. Okay, let me copy this top part. Let's see how this works. Yeah. What scale am I doing? I think I'm going to try and do this at like a 2:1 scale, just because the building is kind of large as it is. It's not, the building is definitely not 1:1. So let's see how this works. Alrighty, okay. Boy, okay. So yeah, as you can see, I have some sponge down just for filler walls. And so since the building is going to be classical, let's go with, let's see. I think I'm gonna do so the roof itself is kind of slanted as it is. Instead of doing like a flat wall, I think I'm gonna do a sort of curved one. So what if we try and do another brick sort of roof as inspired by the one in the Spawn Castle? So what I would always do is in Victorian or traditional or like classical interior, because that's what we're doing, the main elements of that would be to have a very ornate sort of roof. If you've ever seen any Gilded Age mansions, they always have a very prominent sort of roof detailing and very ornate roof detailing as a whole, basically. Although I'm not going to be able to, probably not going to be able to do this entirely accurate. But yeah, let's see what we can do. So yeah, I'd always like to separate the wall from the roof if I can. So let's see, have that as that material. Granted, we don't have night vision, so that's not going to be the best. But yeah, okay. So also another thing, yeah, temporary light. That's a good idea. One moment. Yeah, so one thing I like to do when I'm doing interior like this. Yeah, and before I move lighting, I don't think night vision works. But one thing I like to do is to give sort of like a gradient of detailing colors from the floor to the ceiling. If you guys look in the small castle again, I used like reddish sort of colorations on the walls, and then I used a lighter wood for the pillars, and then a darker wood and like nether brick for the roof or for the ceiling. So it kind of adds like a gradation of light to dark detailing. So I might try that in here and see how that works. Let's make this green. There we go. Yeah, okay. And so one main thing that they do in Victorian sort of interior is they have a almost like a cornice for the actual transition from the roof to the building itself. So I might try something like that and see how that works. Again, this isn't going to be perfect because I'm doing it live. I'm not going to spend, years on it just to see how it looks. Yeah, again, I'm going to try and be making a Victorian or classical sort of bank and seeing how it works out. Granted, I don't have super long, so let's see if it works. Can someone kick that guy spamming? Yeah, okay. Let's see, what do we got here? Okay, so here, if you guys are looking, I made a small bit of a cornice. So this sort of would differentiate the actual wall from the ceiling, and it sort of helps to ease the eye and make it legible that, like, hey, this wall is turning into a ceiling now, and it sort of it helps to add like a sort of a curvature to the ceiling as a whole. And so again, I'm utilizing that sort of idea of like a gradation of color, where I go from this dark oak to nether brick. I might change this later on, but let's see. That's all right. I'm gonna replace this clay here with a lighter version of the clay. Ooh, that's not what I meant to do. To sort of highlight it. Right now we can't see it, but when I add lighting, it'll probably look a bit better. Yeah, so let's see. So while I'm building this, if you guys have any questions as to what I'm doing, or like how I'm doing anything, why I'm doing anything, the way I'm doing it, feel free to ask. I'll try and read the chat and answer as I'm doing it to the best of my abilities. Yeah, so again, I'm gonna copy and paste this sort of window detail and put it just right inside. So that way you can emphasize the windows and make them look nice, because they look nice on the outside. They should probably look nice on the inside too. Just a snug, maybe 4 blocks instead of a half slab in the corner. That's a good idea. I think you're referring to the stair. I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about. I think he's referring to this thing. Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I'm not gonna leave it. I think yeah, it's all right. But yeah, this is sort of the first step I would take in doing an interior. I'd make sure I get all the windows in and organize all the walls, and yeah. Then I'd lay down all the actual detailing and everything. So yeah, this of course does not work perfectly, but let's see what we can do with this. Okay, that's kind of a cool window thing right there. Yes, I'm gonna get the other windows. I think I'm just gonna do half of this and copy and paste it to the other side. And so right now I changed the walls to green because I thought that would look all right, but looking back at it, I think it's kind of dark. So I think I'm going to try and change this to a nice orange and try and make it match with the roof a bit. So let's see. Oh, that's not the right color. There we go. Yeah, I think that looks a bit better. So again, when I'm thinking about this, we're trying to create a bank, right? So if I'm thinking about a bank, I want it to be nice and like pristine and like dignified, and I want people to come in and feel like this is a place of like business transactions and money. So I think orange kind of gives that emotion and sort of evokes that emotion properly. But yeah. Let's see, what do we have here? Here I move the window one spot forward so it can sort of emphasize the window frame, because a large part of traditional interior, not as much in modern interior, is emphasizing these massive window frames, as you can see. But yeah, let's see. I'm gonna get rid of that and that. Okay. Going to continue this all the way along. This building it was not designed with interior in mind, so it's not going to be not going to work perfectly. And again, I am sort of just, winging it here, but let's see how it works. Okay. I think I'm going to add some stripes to this wall too, just to break it up so it's not pure orange. Yeah, again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask away. I'll try and answer them in the BuildCon chat. Okay. Jill says, how do you give a house that look for interior, or no, how do you give it, I think you mean like, how do I design a house that works for interior? If you're asking that, then okay, yeah. What I would usually do before just like going ahead and building the exterior, I would try and plan it out first, do like a physical floor plan, or like draw or sketch or just build a floor plan first. And then try and arrange where everything would go, and then build the exterior up, and then build the interior up. Okay, let's see. Do you have any books or places you recommend to learn the types of interiors? That's a great question. There are certain interior magazines that I often go to. There's a lot of them out there. I also go to, just like Pinterest and Google Images a lot. A lot of the buildings and the rooms that I showed in some of my examples are all inspired by actual places. Like I know the library in my big castle, that one is inspired by the library in the Biltmore estate. And the main theater hall that I made, that one is directly inspired by the Opera House in Oslo, Norway. Do I have a Pinterest? I don't really have a personal open one. Let's see, what else do we have? What do I like more, interior or exterior? Personally, I enjoy interior more because it gives you like a sense of immersive, like it sort of immerses you more than exterior can, and it's also it's good for like providing atmosphere. And I personally just think it's more fun, even though I do enjoy both. I think interior kind of tells more of a unique story, and not as many people do it, so I just enjoy it more. Let's see, are there any differences in designing an interior for a circular room? Yeah, definitely. So if you're doing like a circular sort of room, I would try and put like a dome at the ceiling, and I would, orient everything around, in like a circular pattern. So like all the pillars and everything would try and mimic that sort of circular feature. And I'd probably do a lot of like circular detailing just to try and, sort of harmonize the concept and the shape of the room. Anyway, I'm gonna favorite type of interior design. Do you mean like favorite style, or like I'm not sure you mean style. Okay. I'm not sure if I have a favorite by that, but I really do enjoy modern interior, and I enjoy sort of a classical or traditional interior. Yeah, I think modern is my favorite, to be honest. Because there's so many different ways you can go with modern, and it's also really nice and really clean and really smooth. Yeah, I think that's my personal favorite. Yeah, okay, let's see what we're doing here. What are some blocks which you find are often overlooked by average player for interior? Let's see. I'm sorry if I skipped your question. Post it again. I can't. It's hard to see everything in the chat. But what are some blocks that you think are often overlooked? Well, I know bookcases. Those are often I think they're used too often in most interiors. Overlooked. That's a good question. I think just like any of the newer used blocks, or any of just like the unique sort of blocks that people wouldn't think of for using interior, like people like the blocks that people use for exterior all the time. Yeah, mushroom blocks. All the blocks that people use for exterior are not always used for interior. Because most people, when they think of interior, they just think of like a medieval house with like bookcases and chests and furnaces and cauldrons all just like spammed all over the place. Let's see. What do I have here? Oh boy. By chance to do modded Minecraft. If you add modded blocks, I think they would work the same. I'm not sure. Let's see. Have I ever done a greenhouse? I've built exteriors for greenhouses, but not interiors. If you were to go and do an interior, I'd make sure that you have a lot of natural lighting, and I'd arrange all the plants in a unique way so that they're all excuse me, they can all be like evenly viewed. And I'd make sure to emphasize, like overgrowing plants and that whole sort of deal if you're doing a greenhouse. Let's see. Do I make a color palette before starting? For me personally, I usually do not do a color palette. I like to just, try things out and see what they see how they work. But if you're just starting out, using color palettes can definitely benefit you, because it's nice to have like something that you can just go on and rely off of. And if you ever get stuck, you can just look back and say, hey, these are my materials that I'm working with. Let me use one of these and reference one of them. Oh boy, there's a lot of questions. Yeah, I apologize if I don't get to all of them. If I don't read it, just post it back again. What kind of block would I like to see added? Personally, I would really love to see a black version of the quartz pillar. I think that would be really cool. Do I use texture packs? I think texture packs can help, yeah. Like especially on the World of Corrales server. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with that, but they use modern texture packs all the time. Personally, though, I only really use the default one nowadays, just because I like to challenge myself and see what I can do in the limits of the default texture pack. Do I landscape as well? If you mean terraform, I dabble in terraforming. Let's see. Oh my goodness. How much? Okay. Someone said, do I try to evoke more of a feeling or a story when building? It kind of depends on what I'm actually building. So I think it's always good to have some sort of a story in mind when you're creating something. An interior is also a great sort of vessel to evoke emotions and stories. So I'd say a little of both. I like to have somewhat of a story and use lighting and atmosphere to evoke emotion and a certain feeling when you enter a room. Okay. Oh my goodness. So many questions, guys. How does the structure, house, etc., influence the interior? Personally, I think the type of building, like the type of interior, always depends on the exterior. So, like what I'm doing right now, this is like a house, but I'm turning it into a bank, so it's not going to work appropriate. It's not going to work perfectly. So like houses, are usually small, so it usually benefits a house if you're doing like sort of 1-to-1 scale. But if I'm doing like a bank or like a big sort of grand spawn like the castles I made, then I went for more of like a 2-to-1 scale, just to showcase a sort of grander scale. Yeah. Let's see. Hey, I'm trying my best. Okay, I can't do all the windows and everything at once. It's hard to talk and do everything at once. Favorite or most used ways of covering up areas where the exterior almost creeps into the interior. Well, for me, another benefit of building on a 2-to-1 scale, usually I will just cover the walls in another wall, as I did in this interior. I just covered the detailing with this this wall and clay sort of pattern. Yeah, so I enjoy doing that. Okay. What would be one thing that you would say to someone who wants to improve in doing interior? I would try and break away from. I'm not sure what level of skill you are in interior, but I would say try and break away from using bookcases if you're one of those people. But I would say go online and find references and do do research and try and get inspired and find the type of interior you want to make, because I always use references whenever I'm doing stuff. all these buildings, for the most part, have independent references that exist in the real world. So I'd try and go out and do that. Yeah. Let's see. What were you saying about lighting on the walls to make them look bigger or something? I missed that. So in the smaller castle, that one has a lot of arches, if you notice. And I basically added lighting at the top of the arches to emphasize what was contained within the arch. So some of the arches have like details or statues or whatever it may be. Yeah, and that sort of highlights that thing. Excuse me. That sort of highlights whatever is inside the arch. Yeah. Oh my God, this chat. Where do I get references from? Personally, I mean, what you could do, you could just look up like classical bank interior or like, modern bedroom. Pinterest has a lot of good modern stuff. But I just browse like everywhere on Google, everywhere on Pinterest until I find what I'm specifically looking for. But no, I don't really have any like specific like special website that I could just direct you to. It's a lot of just independent research, which Mosu or Denzaru, he covered sort of finding concepts for your builds. And you can do that. You can apply that same process to finding references for exterior and interior. Let's see. Yeah, Corrales Inspiration Series. Let's see. Okay. But what do you mean by 2-to-1 scale? I hear people say it, but I don't really know what it is. Should it be that one block is able to take up a 2x2 area? For a 2-to-1 scale, I usually refer to the player's sort of perspective as a whole. So if you go to some of the examples, if you pretend to sit down at like a chair, it's not going to be to your player's scale. It's going to be twice that of what the player scale would be. So if you compare it to, I think the Brutalist example is a 1-to-1, and I think the Villa is 1-to-1. I'm not entirely sure on that, but compare the Brutalist one to some of my other interiors, and see how the furniture differences or changes in the scale. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Have I ever seen building interior in a large scale like 20-to-1? Personally, I have not done that, but I know people like Denzaru have done that, and it looks really awesome if it's done well. He used to do that a lot. I'm not sure if he's doing it so much anymore. Common mistakes that people do when doing interiors. That's a good question. Let's see. Well, usually when starting off, people just spam a bunch of bookcases or furnaces and chests and everything, and that's just like a filler interior. I don't think that's not very good in my opinion. But it's it's like the basics. That's what everyone sort of does. What I think you should do is you should apply the same effort and concepts that you applied to exterior to an interior. So by doing that, I mean like go out and find references for your interior. If it's like a medieval house, instead of just like spamming bookcases and whatever, go out and look for like, what did medieval houses have? Did they have like dirt floors? Did they have like solidified brick furnaces, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? That whole sort of thing. So the apartment looking complex next to the modern builds, what style is that? The exterior for that is a Gilded Age, I think it's Gilded Age Baroque style of architecture, and the interior is modern. Yeah. What are some things you see often forgotten in an interior? That's a good one. Well, yeah, I'm not saying not to use bookcases. I'm saying not to just like spam them everywhere and just rely on them. It's okay to have bookcases. Just they should be used if they have a purpose. So like if you have a library, then sure you can use bookcases. Or if you're doing it in like a office building or whatever, like they have a purpose. Just make sure you don't rely on them as your crutch. No, I don't hate bookcases. I just think that they're often overused in interior. If they're used correctly, they're fine. I was reading a question. What did I say? Some things that are often forgotten in an interior. One important part of doing interiors is to make sure that you include the purpose of what you're actually building. So say if you're building a house, you want to make sure it has like a kitchen, a bedroom, a dining room, a foyer, a living room, that sort of thing. Or if you're doing like an office building, you got to make sure it has, you know, bathrooms and offices and executive suites and that whole deal. You got to make sure that you include all the essential parts of your interior when you're actually forming it. No, yeah, for my theater, Sean, I'm not sure what happened to that. There were just a bunch of chunk errors. I didn't do anything. I'm not sure what happened there. Do you think there's a benefit to having a one-to-one interior on a large castle? Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a benefit to have a one-to-one interior. I personally, for the castle, it was just so massive and so intimidating. I figured it would take me, you know, 3 times as long to do it on a 1-to-1 than it would to do it on a 3-to-1. So I just built it for that, for time's sake. But yeah, if you want to do a 1-to-1 on such a massive thing, you can benefit it by making it kind of like mysterious and hidden, and like, you know, you can make it like really confusing, and just it sort of doubles how massive it is if it's 1-to-1, even if it's a really small build, because of how, you know, close and how small the rooms are relative to each other, as opposed to a, you know, 3-to-1 building where there's only 1 or 2 rooms that are massive, if you get what I mean. How do I manage my space? I usually try and plan it out beforehand. And of course, I look at references, and I make sure in my head I think of like, okay, what purpose does this room need to serve? Like, what rooms do I need in this building? You know, that whole sort of thing. I make sure to plan it out beforehand, and then I actually go through and execute and, you know, build it. Have I made anything lava based? I don't think so. The only lava based. I don't think so. That would be interesting though, like a volcano sort of interior. That would be really cool. If you're referring to like structure or interior just in general for lava stuff, I would make sure to use like magma blocks and nether bricks. And oh yeah, someone just messaged me a forge. That would be awesome. Yeah, use like iron and, you know, in like a cave or something. Yeah, you know, nether brick, that sort of thing, like a reddish hue. But probably you might want to refrain from wood. Yeah. Hopefully I answered that. How long did it take to make the big castle? The whole build took me like 7 months. I made the castle in like maybe 2 months. It took me a while because I spent a lot of time on that. Yeah. How can I use heads to benefit my interior? That's a great question. I use a lot of heads when I'm doing interior. Unfortunately, they all disappeared because this was I basically selected this as a schematic, and schematics don't really carry over heads very well, but heads are awesome. Arcaniacs has this head database that has like a bunch of different devices, like, you know, fish bowls and candles and, you know, everything in between, basically. And so that's definitely useful all the time. I primarily use them for like candles and that sort of thing. Do you use IRL interiors as a concept for yours? Yes, I use real life interiors for concepts all the time. A lot of my rooms and references in the big castle and all my other castles and everything I built has usually a reference to it. When building, is it best to use full blocks or not? That kind of depends on what you personally enjoy. Like for me, I personally enjoy using stairs and slabs because I think it just makes everything look better, and that's just what I prefer. You can do interior with or without stairs and slabs. That doesn't really matter. It depends on, you know, what you're building. So like sci-fi might not use stairs and slabs as regularly, but yes, I am a confirmed slab spammer. But like, you know, traditional or like Victorian might use stairs a whole lot more, and it might benefit you to use stairs and slabs. Okay. What is a good way to create a stairwell? Stairwells, depending on the type of style you're doing. If it's like traditional, you want to emphasize the stairwell and make it nice and grand, like my castles. They usually have like very grand sort of stairwell foyers. But if it's modern, then yeah, spiral staircase is a great way to do that. If it's more modern, you kind of want to have it like tucked away, almost as if the stairwell is kind of like a closet. They're usually not emphasized as much in modern sort of interior. Have I found any use for barrier blocks? Not not really like for aesthetics sake, but they have some like practical usages definitely to like block off areas. Let's see. Something you should build when starting out. So like, I guess if you're starting out an interior, what should you make? I think you should experiment and try something that you haven't done before. So most people, when they're doing interior, they do like a house or something. I would try something that's not a house. Try like a courthouse or like a town hall or like, you know, an opera house maybe. Try something that's away from your norm, just so you can branch out and get a feel for what interior is, and maybe try and recreate something that exists in real life. Um, yeah, let's see. Have you ever attempted or seen two or more different styles of an interior mixed together while still looking good? How is it done to look good? Um, Not really. I'm sure I probably have and just can't remember. I know on World of Corrales they tried making like traditional and modern stuff combined. Um, it doesn't really work out the best if you're doing something that's like polar opposites, things that are polar opposites like modern and traditional interiors. But it definitely can be done. I know like there are real life buildings that have been like repurposed, like townhouses that have modern interiors that integrate elements of traditional sort of architecture into them. So it is definitely possible, just not very common. How do you do gameplay centric interiors versus aesthetic interiors? That's a good question. So aesthetic ones, I usually just focus on the detail and make it as realistic as possible. But if you're focusing on gameplay, you want to make sure that that takes priority. So like, I would say you don't like when I would use flowers, for example, you wouldn't probably want that in like a gameplay oriented map, because that would prevent your players from, you know, like shooting arrows because it might like get stuck in the flowers, or using like paintings or anything. You don't really want that in like a map. Um, so you got to think of like your audience, who's going to play it, how they're going to play it. I would make sure to like, you know, play test it and make sure there are like lines of sight and that whole sort of deal. Yeah. Um, where would you use over decorated walls? I would say those are good when you're sort of in my theater, just as an example. That one has a really like messy sort of rough textured wall to create emphasis and kind of contrast with the rest of the modern, but like the rest of the modern furniture and environment. So I think that can be used if you're using it as like emphasis. What blocks do I prefer for lighting? I enjoy using prismarine lamps and beacons. I think those are really nice, and they can be easily hidden. I like to hide my lighting though, just so it's not obvious. How did I do the cupboard doors? I tried something like this, but it didn't work. And he posted the link. Hopefully this will load. I think you're referring to the ones with doors. I just use Bold Edit and, you know, cut. Yeah, I use Bold Edit and stack them on top of each other. Let's see. What's better, to under-decorate or over-decorate? I think it depends on the style. So like if you're doing modern, you definitely don't want to over-decorate. But if you're doing like a traditional sort of thing, then you really do want to, you do want to over-decorate, because that style is very, you know, like ornate and that sort of element. So it depends on what you're doing, and depends on the building itself. Like if you're doing, say, like, you know, a mansion, like a Gilded Age mansion, that's going to have a lot of detail, but like a shack or like a medieval house might not have as much detail. Do you think roofs are often forgotten? By roofs, do you mean like ceilings? If so, yeah, they're definitely forgotten, because most people usually just do like a flat sort of ceiling, which, although it has its merits, a ceiling can often attract the most attention to an interior. Like if you guys go into the library of my big castle, that has like a really pretty, I think it's a pretty cool ceiling design, and that sort of grabs your attention, and it sort of acts as like a centerpiece and or like a focal point to the build. So yeah, I think roofs are often forgotten, but even though they are quite a vital element of interior design. Yeah. If so, I've seen it. Okay. So is there an unrealistic type of interior? That's a good question. Probably, I'm not sure. I'm sure they definitely exist. Probably stuff like concept art for like Guild Wars maybe, or like God of War. That's kind of some like unrealistic fantasy interior that exists. Yeah, look that up. God of War interior. Let's see. Do you remember off the top of your head the ID for the sunflower stem that you use sometimes to make flower crown stems? I think it's 175, 175, I think. Yeah. How much longer am I having my panel for? I mean, if you guys are still up for it, I'll go for like another half hour. Because my panel, there's not another panel happening for a bit. Yeah, so I'm gonna stick around for another half hour. You guys can tune out if you don't want to. I'm gonna be here though. Let's see. What would you say is the main difference between classical and modern interiors? I would say main difference, probably, you know, like the wall detail. Modern interiors, like the wall and the ceilings, they're usually just one material and they're very flat. Whereas traditional ones, they're like very emphasized and they're very unique in that sort of way. Okay. Why do most of my builds not have attics? That's an interesting one. I know my Home Alone house has an attic. I don't know what that was, but yeah, my Home Alone one has an attic. They usually don't have attics because, say, like my castles, those are very like sort of grand as a whole, and attics kind of give like a cramped sort of feeling, and that can take away from that often. If you're doing like a medieval house, that would definitely fit well, like a nice like attic. How do you make the most out of interior out of a narrow space? So if you're dealing with a limited space, I'd make sure to put like a high ceiling and then add try to reduce the amount of stuff you put on the walls just to try and maintain a steady level of like navigatable space. Sure, yeah. Yeah, I would high ceilings and then you know, reduce stuff on the walls and be careful and think about how you place your furniture. What do you think about? What do you think is fun about building things in Minecraft? I think just building stuff in Minecraft is awesome because it's, you know, it's relatively easy compared to other programs like CAD, but you can get a whole lot of detail out of it, and you can get like stories and atmosphere and emotions and everything because we have a relatively decent lighting engine. But yeah, I think it's just awesome because it's a way of expressing emotions. Yeah. Okay. Geez. What do you think of this sort of cartoonish interiors on New Haven's build? Would you ever be interested in doing something like that? I think that's the Alice in Wonderland one, right? I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, I think those are awesome. Yeah. Those are awesome because they're on like the similar scale to mine, where it's like, you know, like 2-to-1, 3-to-1, 5-to-1, etc. But they're cartoony because they're not necessarily like realistic. They're very they're very fantasy. Yeah, I'd be up for doing something like that in the future. Maybe I could see myself doing that. Yeah, those are really cool. Let's see. Best. Oh God, there's so many questions. Okay, do you intend on an IRL career in interior design? No, that's not too personal. That's fine. Personally, I'm planning on being an architect. I don't really want to be an interior designer personally, just because they don't really get paid that well. Even though I do enjoy interior design, and it's useful to have like a basis in interior design if you're if you're going to be an architect. It's good to know how to plan spaces and whatnot. Let's see. There's some questions up here. What is your opinion on floors made of logs placed horizontally in alternating directions? Yeah, I use those all the time. Those are awesome for like checkerboard sort of patterns. Those are real nice if you're doing like if you're trying to create like a wood carpet almost. They're nice for like a sort of warm, like almost log cabin sort of feeling. What do I think about how inefficiently Minecraft runs shaders? For example, Skyrim can handle shaders, yeah. Using the same computer. Yeah, that bothers me because I'm building on a laptop. Like I'm doing all this on a laptop, believe it or not, so I can't even run shaders. So I think that's quite annoying that Minecraft is so inefficient. But I think Windows 10 will hopefully fix that because I think that's kind of the direction Minecraft is going. Would I do interior tutorials in the future? Maybe. I think maybe. Yeah, I could try and do that. I don't think I was going to try and disclose something, but I'm not sure if I can. Yeah, I'll keep that at a solid maybe. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Mm, yes, I see some of you guys are on in laptops as well. I can relate. How did BuildCon find out about you and invite you to do this tutorial? Well, for me, I actually kind of invited myself because I happen to be friends with Cake Icing because we're both on Blockworks, the team Blockworks, and so I was like, there hasn't been a interior masterclass yet. Why don't we do one of those? Because I think I wanted to see one personally, so I offered my abilities to help, sort of teach one, and that's how that happened. Yeah, I kind of invited myself, basically. Can I show you guys chandeliers? Okay, someone requested chandeliers. Yeah, I can do a chandelier. Chandelier, yes. I can speak words properly. Okay, hold on. Let me just read these other questions. Okay. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So yeah. Again, I apologize. This is probably really OCD inducing that I haven't finished this interior. It's hard to read stuff and do live stuff at the same time. But yeah, and a chandelier was requested, so I'm gonna do that. Yeah. So if you guys are interested, here's how I usually start my. Here's how my is this grief. One moment. I have to deal with some technical difficulties. But Pancho, I think this is fine. Oh no, that's not fine, but I just ignore it. Yeah. Anyway, chandelier. Let's go. So I would usually start with a hopper as if it's like a hook that would connect it to the ceiling. And so I'm going to do one similar to the chandeliers found in my Home Alone house and the two castles. And so they're just like pure glass. Yes, glass panes. And so chandeliers of this sort of style, you want them to have like a nice unique shape. So either like rounded or like egg sort of shaped. So let's see, light, great, yeah, boom, there we go. So now what you can see, hoppers are transparent, so that's going to be hidden underneath there. And so what I would usually do is I'll measure out, like, say I want it to be that big, maybe I want it to hang down, so I'll put these as set those as like a chain and have it hang down. This one, tiered shapes with sharp ends. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I'm gonna try and make like a rounded sort of chandelier and see what happens. So there's a whole bunch of different types of chandeliers. I personally enjoy doing sort of like rounded sort of shaped ones as opposed to like multiple tiered ones. So I'll do like a base shape sort of like this, just see what I can get done, and then I'll go through with the panes and see what it looks like. I usually just go over every surface with panes and then detail it up, make it look kind of round. So when I'm the thoughts that are going through my mind when I'm doing this, I personally think it's a bit too small because I want it to kind of go in and then shape out and get thicker towards the bottom and then go back in a tiny bit. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna delete this bottom part, make it come back out thicker. Yeah, it is a bit of a pain. Nice. Yeah, it is kind of small. So this is what happened. This is like trial and error. So yeah. So now that looks kind of like a bell almost. So what if I try something like this? Yeah. Alrighty. So I'm just experimenting, trying to shape it the best that I can. Yeah. Okay. So that's sort of adequate. Of course, I would go through this multiple times and just see what's the best design I can go with. It's always nice when you have a reference picture or like a reference room that has a chandelier. That's always good. But yeah, so now this has a better shape where it kind of slopes downward. I'm gonna add a light in here so it shines like a chandelier. How am I gonna light it up? That's basically how I light it up. I just add a little light into it. But yeah, now I go over all the surfaces with glass. Now what if I do something like this? Yeah, okay, I like this. Yeah. Can fill this in like that. What if I try something like that? Did I mess up block? Okay. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna go over all this in panes. Okay. But yeah, but then you can use the panes to sort of shape how you want it to look. Because they're sort of, they have a smaller hitbox. They're a smaller sort of shaped block. So they can help accentuate the curvature of your chandelier. Yeah, using that nice vocabulary. Alrighty. Oh, notice. Okay. Block there. There we go. Alrighty. Okay. Yeah. So this is basically how I do my chandeliers. This one is similar to the one in the dining room of my smaller castle. It's nice and rounded. Yeah. Okay. Put some. Yeah. But now, if you take a look at it, it kind of looks adequate. It's it's kind of shaped decently. But yeah, it goes from the top, narrows down, gets a bit bigger, and gets smaller at the bottom. Okay, left-hand corner of the interior. Does it annoy you when you can't fit the whole arch like that? If so, is there anything you'd usually do to make it kind of fit more? Do you mean this? Okay, yeah, the left corner where the arch doesn't fit. So if it were me in this building, I'd try and plan out the building so that the window doesn't fit. But sometimes stuff like this, I should have continued the wall like that. So it's like solid. But usually I'll just try and ignore it, like, to be honest. Because like, say if you're looking from the bottom right here, you're not gonna pay too much attention to that. Especially if I put like a tree or like a bush right here, which actually sounds like a good idea. I'm gonna do that right now. Like a nice tree right here. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I apologize if this isn't finished. It's hard to build stuff live. Yeah. See, now that I put like the bush there, your eyes kind of divert to the bush as opposed to the entire thing. Let me see. Is this still okay? We still got a few better people in here. Okay, yeah. Alrighty. Okay, now that there's not many questions, I'm gonna continue on this interior. Let's see. Yeah, so we're doing a bank, right? Yeah. Okay. What if I make this? Okay. Do I use armor stands? That's a good question. I personally do not use armor stands because they're usually very laggy, and they're a pain to get them correct. Even though they are certainly beneficial, I'm just not a huge fan of them. In certain instances, they're good, but they're not always the best. It would be nice if there was like a plugin to like automate something like that. I'm sure there probably is, but yeah. For me, I'm not a huge fan of them, just personally. Yeah. I'm sure there are some plugins. I'm just not familiar with those plugins. Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, what I'm doing here is I'm adding a sort of cornice at the bottom of the room. So now you can see that it sort of ties in with the rest of the stone brick, but then separates it from the rest of the room. And then in the ceiling, I added just a acacia wood pattern to sort of tie in with the orange walls, but also make the ceiling sort of pop, if you know what I mean. And so I made the chandelier. I'll either make the chandelier white or yellow, but this particular room, I think white works the best because it already it kind of matches with the window frames. Do I prefer sea lanterns or redstone lamps? I prefer sea lanterns because they're kind of like they're monotone. Like the redstone lamp has like a texture to it, but the sea lamp doesn't really have a texture to it, so it works in basically every interior. Yeah. Whereas redstone lamps, those are good for like steampunk sort of medieval sort of interiors. So those aren't able to be used. They can't be used everywhere, in my opinion. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna keep. Any interiors you'd advise using lamps? Um, yeah, I would advise using like redstone lamps and like steampunk sort of interiors, where they're like mechanical sort of interiors, because those would benefit from the texture. Because the textures of blocks play a huge role. Like, for example, I like to use like the coarse dirt block as like a wood, like to simulate sort of like a wood texture. So like, say for example, like where you guys see this granite that I use at the top, if I were to replace that with like a dirt, um, of course it's not actually supposed to be dirt, but it's a different texture that sort of adds to the overall concept of what it is. So the textures of blocks play a big role in what you use. How long have I been building? About I think 4.25 years, maybe 4ish years. I joined I think I got Minecraft in December of 2012. How do I plan to make use of the new 1.12 blocks for interiors? I think you're referring to the terracotta blocks. Those are going to be awesome for like floor patterns, and especially for like if I'm creating like carpets or whatever. Those are going to be super awesome. Do you build on any global slash public servers? I build on the Builders Refuge server from time to time. Other than that, I mostly just build on the Blockworks private server. Uh, yeah, build battle, redstone lamp versus sea lantern versus glowstone versus torches versus envons versus beacons. Yeah, that'd be funny. Okay, so yeah, this is supposed to be a bank, right? So let me I saw a design that I like. I'm gonna do like a bank teller sort of thing. Terracotta blocks work for ceilings. Yeah, they could definitely work for ceilings if you're doing like a sort of if you're doing like a Baroque thing. That kind of gives me the idea if I think of oh god, what was the church that Michelangelo painted the ceiling? Someone has the name of it. I forget what the name of it was. Sistine Chapel. That's it. Yeah, that's it. You could use terracotta blocks to sort of emulate something like that, maybe. Do I often make rooms symmetrical to some degree? Yeah, I definitely make rooms symmetrical. It depends on the type of style. So like if you're doing like a classical interior sort of like this, it benefits you if you do a symmetric room, because that sort of evokes the idea of like opulence and grandeur and like stability basically. But if you're doing something asymmetrical, it's more likely it's going to be modern, because that's just sort of how the styles work. But there are benefits to doing symmetrical and asymmetrical interiors. What's my favorite build theme? I think you mean like style. If you mean style, then probably like Victorian or like Baroque. I really like Baroque architecture. It's awesome. Yeah, it's all good. Oh dang it. Baroque, yeah, Baroque. I apologize. I cannot enunciate my words properly. Yes, Baroque. That's the proper word. Sorry, I apologize. I can't speak words. Yes, Baroque. Um, yeah, okay. Have I ever built interiors in Conquest Reforged? I have not. I would love to do that though. Like I have some plans that I might try and do a few builds in Conquest, just because of like the amount of like metadatas and stuff they have. Would be awesome to do like a really detailed medieval interior in. Yeah, so maybe someday. Okay, so I before I did this, I looked up classical bank and I found this image. I'm gonna post it in the events chat of of like a booth teller, of like a bank teller sort of thing. And so what I'll usually do if I'm doing like a bank or whatever, I'll look up images like classical bank. And so I found this one. I'm gonna post the link to it in the events chat. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna try and. Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on. That might be the wrong link. I'm not sure if it's gonna load actually. Let me see what I can do. But basically, it's this cool wooden bank teller thing. Um, yeah.
Okay. Well, that was awkward. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. I think I just got booted from the server. On my phone. Yeah, can you still hear me though? I'm not sure if that. Yeah, I'm up. Yeah, my computer died, or maybe I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, I can just. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna improvise. You guys basically got the gist. If you have any questions, I'll answer them from here. I apologize for the low mic quality. If you have any questions, post them in the Q&A channel, and I do a bit of a Q&A. If the server comes back online, I'll try and continue that. But yeah, any questions, put them in the Q&A, and I'll try and answer them. How would I do shutters and curtains? That's a good question. If you go to my Home Alone house, that one has some curtains in it. You can either build them out of physical, real like actual blocks. That's what I did in that one. Or you could use banners. Banners are also good for shutters and curtains. You could also probably use doors maybe to do like wooden sort of shutters. But shutters can they can add to your windows if you're doing like a traditional sort of house. They'll make it more like homey and more warm. But like I would not really use them in a modern sort of house because modern windows are more boxy and geometric. If I do tutorials, I would probably put them on the Blockworks channel. Yeah, Sean, Acacia Doors, best wooden shutters. Yeah. You can pause it if you want, because I'm just gonna do a Q&A, I guess.